Hey guys, welcome back to the Ramble. I am your humble host, Mariology, and from now until the end of time I wish to be referred to as a dog instead of a human being. That is all. This is Kill All Men 2020. Hashtag KAM 2020 and hashtag Kill All Men is running rampant in the sacred halls of Twitter, delivered by a certain cult to proclaim their opposition to hate speech in all its shapes and forms. Obviously. This trash is tried and true, tested and terminated with eloquent efficiency. Men are privileged oppressors, supposedly, and so one cannot hate speech the menfolk. Just punching up without expecting any punitive measures. Of course. When once the enemy is found, when once the other is delightfully othered, the one can do whatever and what not to the other with no repercussions expected. Just as long as one remembers that it's not really about hating men, honest to goddess, it's only about equality between the sexes. The dictionary says so, and so it must be true, despite these calls and wishes and hoarse whispers to kill all men. Quite alright, of course. It's just a prank, bruh, just a prank. It's just a joke, and men must tolerate this elitist call for extermination. Nothing ever changes. This is naught but a tired old rerun, a road-raging repetition of past years' genuine genocidal grandiosity. It don't matter much. It's only men after all. Forget it, guys and gals. This is naught but mechanical and unfeeling menfolk, you see. Not to care. All men everywhere hurt and oppress all women everywhere after all. That's what the feminist brigade has told us, and so it must be true. That you yourself don't do it don't matter. You are guilty by virtue of masculinity, and so must be purged and expunged and exterminated like we do with cockroaches, lice, rats and other such pests. And of course, the oppressed can call for their oppressors to be killed, and the oppressors don't clamp down on it with the full fury of the patriarchy. For some strange and peculiar reason. Must be an error in communication. Lines of communication broken, beaten, burnt down by the plight of the common womenfolk, united as they are by their common communal hatred of the terrible bourgeoisie. And should you dare to complain, should you dare to express some disagreement with this obvious hatred presented here and now as a call to kill all men, you will be made subject to scorn and to ridicule, to mockery and contempt. Then it's all reruns of fragile masculinity and drinking male tears and bathing in male tears and oh, but you must understand a joke and oh and wow and my goodness, how dare you react negatively to a ferocious force that calls for the death of you yourself for being so incredibly rude and obnoxious as to dare being born a boy and develop into a monstrous man. All the while bitching and moaning and wailing like banshees with gonorrhea about the slightest and tiniest manufactured so-called trespass against women, like the size of iPhones and women pooping at work or spending more time on the toilet than men. Very discriminatory, much sexist. Wow. The same fucking people that go up in arms at the tiniest perceived offense against the sacred women's, labeling it hate speech and calling for a banishment from society, for all those who dare be so rude and obnoxious consider calling for killing all men as naught but a joke. It's not hate speech when men are the recipients of hate. We all know this, of course. And there are no repercussions against these people who think that the rules and laws that they so dearly wish to be put in place so as to protect people from hearing offensive things should never be used against them. Private law. Privilege. One rule for me, another for thee, peasant. Then all the so-called moderate feminists, the supposed real feminists, will come calling at the doors of the so-called manosphere, proclaiming oh so loudly and oh so proudly and profoundly that this is not real feminism, this is not my feminism and so and such, all the while doing absolutely nothing to purge their so-called beautiful and equality-seeking movement of these so-called fringe elements, these loud-mouthed radicals, the very vocal minority who give the other 5% of feminists out there a bad name and an even worse reputation. It's more important, you see, to get the horrible men who might perhaps and oddly enough object to being wished death upon for being born such as they are to understand that this is not real feminism. It's only ever about equality and not about hating men. Protecting the sacred name of the movement is more important than anything else. Okay, maybe it's only about hating men a little bit, since it is all toxic masculinity that brought about the hashtag #KillAllMen. But that is not the fault of men, that is the fault of the patriarchy, which supposedly is men, and thusly the fault of men even when it isn't, because double speech is the style of the time, and everything is a social construct that ought to be deconstructed. Except those social constructs which the feminist hive mind hold near and dear to their heart. That is truth, and must be held forth as absolute truth, even when absolute truth don't exist. And why? Because it feels right. And so ultimately it is the fault of men that hashtag #KillAllMen came about. If only men buckled down and did exactly what feminism demands of them, even the things that contradict the other things, then there would be no need for this supposedly venting from the poor and downtrodden whammons. Sounds an awful lot like victim blaming if one were to steal a phrase from their book. But that cannot be, for men can never be victims. Yeah, defending the holy name of feminism is more important than purging the Church of Feminism of these supposedly undesirable elements that give feminism a bad name. And then you're told that this is not feminism, it is in fact misandry, even when misandry is not a thing according to the very same fucking feminists. It is all very predictable, and incredibly droll. Every year is the same as the last, is the same as the next. The fake feminist is not a real feminist, even when feminism is not a monolith, and I have this strange sensation of repeating myself here. Must be something in the water or in my bloodstream. Surely this can't have happened before, time and time again. Surely, if this is naught but a loud-mouthed minority, screeching and roaring and raging on, they would have been squeezed out by the good, honourable, noble and decent feminists who only ever seek equality by now, wouldn't they? And surely, my oh my, and don't call me Shirley. And of course feminism helps men too. After all, if all men are killed, men wouldn't have any problems anymore. Checkmate, foul misogynist. We told you that feminism will help men too. It's not exactly a good culture for boys to grow up in, one would think. Nor is it a good culture for men to live in, one assumes. Where this constant hatred, where these constant attacks and assaults, this constant hostility, a barrage of insults and of ridicule, of constant calls that men need to change, that men need to fix themselves, that masculinity is toxic, that testosterone poisoning exists. It is not what one would call a healthy environment, nor is it a healthy society. It must be toxic femininity. Particularly not when it has been going on for so long and is so prevalent that people don't even fucking notice it. And those who do notice it are shamed, shunned and ridiculed even more than those regular guys who don't notice it. Ridiculing men and boys, poking fun at masculinity, calling to kill all men. It's commonplace to a terrifying extent. And yet we who oppose this, we who protest against this, who don't exactly find it amusing or helpful to be told that we are somehow at fault and inherently flawed for being men, are attacked for being hateful, attacked for being bigoted, shamed and named and blamed for hating women and contributing to the so-called oppression of women. As well as being referred to as fascists, as neo-Nazis, as white supremacists, as racists, as homophobic and transphobic, as incels and mass murderers and rape apologists and rapists and whatever else these terribly oppressed whammons can conjure forth to attack their oppressors with impunity. For, of course, advocating for men to not be constantly attacked solely for being men is absolutely and undoubtedly the same as believing in the master race of Aryans and the excellence of the Third Reich, or whatever. And this imbecilic shit-flinging from the ever-so-oppressed whammons is not even the biggest issue facing men. It's just become so rampant, so big, so incredibly ingrained in our society that one would do well to open one's eyes, and the eyes of other people, and actually fucking notice it, see it, and, in the end, object to it. And the comparisons to Nazis is a bit strange and peculiar, of course, for I do declare that calling for killing a certain identity group for no other reason than their identity has happened sometime previous in recent recorded history. Now, what could that have been and where could that have happened, I wonder? Some industrial-sized genocidal war machine. I can't quite put my finger on it. Might have been the same type of rhetoric running around as well. The same conspiracy theory. That odd, we are oppressed by this group of people because they hold all the wealth and rule all the banks. Jews are lies. Men are trash. Well, would you look at that? Now, I don't particularly enjoy tumbling down the rabbit hole, coming out the other side and pulling reductio ad Hitlerums out my ass, as I consider it the cheap shot to end all cheap shots. However, I do tend to believe that people should be made subject to their own rules and their own behavior. After all, if one wants to play by certain rules, one should damned well be expected to play by certain rules. And if the feminist stormtroopers and their vile trash-talking troglodytes who ain't seen the sunshine in 17 long years of sucking their fingers and painting their toenails to resemble beef curtains have the gall and the audacity to attempt to draw parallels between Nazism and the men's movement, they damned well ought to take a good and long look at themselves and what rhetoric the 97.8% of the not real feminists spew and sputter at the screen and at the world. Now, of course, I get that attacking these troglodytes who post the hashtag #KillAllMen might be me attacking low-hanging fruit. After all, it's just random people on anti-social media. It's just some low-level street trash with daddy issues and a chronic cerebral constipation yelling for people to please pay attention to them. They don't matter. Except that they do. For this, you see, is normalizing a terrifying thing. It is normalizing hatred of men for no other reason than them being men. Even worse, it is making it perfectly acceptable to wish for death upon people for no other reason than the circumstances of their birth. Now, being a free speech fundamentalist, I do not wish for them to be censored, or cancelled, or anything of the sort. Quite the contrary. I wish for them to be free to spew their abhorrent hatred as much as they wish. Them doing this such as they do shows them for what they are. It shows the movement for exactly what it is. A hate movement of the foulest, meanest sort, with claws and fingered claws reaching so far into the societal zeitgeist and the institutions of society that they are still fucking bloody protected against scrutiny and criticism, even when showing their obvious and visceral hatred with no fear of repercussions. In fact, they play victim when called out on their atrocious behavior. Little by little, their behavior will be their downfall. And then, we will only have gynocentrism to combat. God fucking damn it. And that, I think, is that for this ramble. I hope you enjoyed it more than my previous ramblings. Thank you very much for listening. If you wish to support the blog, the channel, and whatever else in any way, shape or form, please take a look at the links down below. And I'll catch you next time. This is Moira Algier, signing off.